Bet you didn't show up today thinking you were going to take a test, but surprise, class is in session. Hi guys, it's Michaela back again with another video, and this one is going to be really different than anything I've done before because I'm not really going to be talking about books much at all. I mean, I guess it's not true because I am going to be talking about books, but I'm not going to be talking about books really with any kind of specificity. I'm going to be talking about my relationship with books as a reader, as a writer, as someone who likes to talk about books, and why in the past few weeks some things I've learned about myself have really shaken and reshaped my relationship to books and to storytelling in general. So I'm going to start by giving you a little test. Bet you didn't show up today thinking you were going to take a test, but surprise, class is in session. So I want you to close your eyes and really focus on imagining a red star. Just picture a red star appearing before you. Now open your eyes again, and I'm going to hopefully be able to put on screen with me a little chart, or otherwise I'll just splice it in here. But take a look at this chart and tell me, or tell yourself because I can't hear you, which of these 6 images most closely resembles what you saw when you closed your eyes. You know, most people are going to say something between like a 4 and a 6. That's going to be the most common answer. For some people it might change. It might start out at a 4 and go up to a 6, or it might sort of vacillate between those and maybe even a couple of the lower numbers. But for me, I see 1. Absolutely nothing. Complete blackness. I have never seen anything when I close my eyes. And it was only about 2.5 weeks ago that I learned how not common that is. That I learned, there's a bug in here. Please? No. I learned that I have a condition that has been called aphantasia. What is aphantasia? Basically, to break it down, A means without and phantasia means imagination. This does not mean that I am incapable of imagining things. It does mean that I am incapable of imagining them visually. When I was first doing a little bit of research into this condition, I was alerted to the fact that this thing might apply to me through a TikTok, of all places, and that piqued my curiosity and started my rabbit hole journey into the world of aphantasia. When I first started researching this, I thought, of course I don't have this, right? Like, of course I can imagine things. I've been a reader and a writer and a storyteller. I've been living in the world of fiction my entire life. Like, I have always had such a strong internal world. I was an only child. I say was as though I'm suddenly spawned a sibling. I still am an only child. Like, I've never had siblings. I always had to entertain myself as a kid. So this has always been a part of who I am, this internal plot-driven world. So of course this isn't me. So I thought. But as it turns out, other people, when they close their eyes, see shit. And I didn't know that was a thing you could do. You know, growing up, you hear phrases like, imagine this, or rather picture this, see this with your mind's eye, or visualize this, or, you know, close your eyes and step into X scene, right? I always believed that this type of language, this very visually driven language, was metaphorical or hyperbolic in a way, because of course you can't actually close your eyes and see things because your eyes are closed, right? So it made sense to me to use this language because, you know, so much of our language, especially in description and in like relating things to each other, is based on visual terminology. Like, of course I would use words like visualize this, but that's not actually what's happening, of course. So when I started to realize that mayhaps my experience with the world is not the norm, I sent some very panicked messages to my friends and asked them to run through the STAR test and a battery of other tests that exist out in the world. And that is how I came to realize that my friends have such rich visual internal lives. Like, they can sometimes, with their eyes open, visualize things, literally see them, that they aren't there, almost like a hallucination, except that they're like fully in control of it and fully aware. And that is fucking wild to me. That is something that I would love to do, but it never occurred to me to really want it because it was so clearly not an option. It was so clearly not part of my lived experience, and I would have always assumed no one else's lived experience either. And so, yeah, basically the last 2 weeks have been me just out of nowhere thinking of things, of the way that I have interpreted the world and interpreted media and lived my life, that has been so clearly influenced by my aphantasia that I didn't even know. For example, I remember being sort of like a preteen and like first going out into internet spaces, and I remember being in like, you know, Harry Potter forums and stuff back when like forums were a thing that we did. Yeah, the Harry Potter movies came out when I was very young, and I did see them when I was very young, but I didn't get to like talk about them with other people until I was older and was able to like use the internet by myself. And I remember people describing how jarring or upsetting or like strange it was for them to see Hogwarts on screen because it was so different from their internal Hogwarts. And I remember at the time thinking that they were being dramatic or like so self-absorbed, because to me, when I saw Hogwarts, my internal Hogwarts was not a place, but rather a list, a collection of ideas and features. So I was like, well, what do you mean your Hogwarts is different from the Hogwarts on the screen, right? The Hogwarts on the screen has the Great Hall with the flying candles and fucking Snape's dungeon and the staircases that move and all of these things that were in the book, they are also on the screen. So therefore the screen is correct, right? And I just had no idea that people, as they were reading these books, were building a very visual, very real idea of Hogwarts in their heads that they could close their eyes or maybe even open their eyes and actually see. I had no idea that that was a thing that they were doing. I'm going to definitely link below some of the videos and maybe articles that I have been reading and when watching in my, like I said, rabbit hole journey into aphantasia. If you are curious, or if this is maybe sparking something in you, in just talking about this aphantasia with the people in my life, others that I know have also been like, wait, what? Like, they are realizing themselves that this is something that they are also living with. My dad seems to have it, not quite to the same degree. When he took the STAR test, his was a 2, and he says if he concentrates very hard, he can see things. I have a new pen pal who, as I was describing it to him, he was like, holy shit, that's me as well. But my mom, on the other hand, she can see things with such vivid detail. We were talking about this whole thing, and we started talking about just like very generally a staircase was brought up, like imagining a staircase. And in my head, I just had like the concept of a staircase, like stairs, like that's it. And she started, with no prompt or anything, started going into this most rich and vivid detail about the staircase she was seeing. And like it was carpeted and like Victorian and shit. And I'm like, what? I couldn't imagine. Tangent, sorry. But I am going to put, like I said, link down below things that have helped me and helped explain things to me. But one of those things was a TED Talk from a woman with aphantasia, and she was also talking about Harry Potter and seeing Harry Potter for the first time, or just seeing anything for the first time, any book to screen adaptation of something, and how a lot of times people who do have visual imaginations will see a character represented and say, well, that's not what they look like to me, whereas a person with aphantasia might see a character represented on screen for the first time and think, oh, so that's what that character looks like. And that's how it is for me. I'm never disappointed. I might be disappointed by a screen adaptation of a book or a series if it's not well done, right? If the acting is bad, if the writing is bad, if the plot deviates wildly from the source material, right? Like, I can still be disappointed, but I'm typically not going to be disappointed visually unless the visuals are like I said, such a deviation. Like, for example, if in Harry Potter he had been like blonde and he didn't have the scar, and you know, if he had wildly differed from what was established as fact about him, that would have been upsetting. Acting skill aside, like another kid could have played Daniel Radcliffe, or another kid besides Daniel Radcliffe could have played Harry, and it wouldn't have bothered me as long as he had the list of characteristics, like physical characteristics, that I knew Harry was supposed to have. And, you know, there's the whole eye color thing. I don't give a shit about that. That was not important to me, and it was never important to me. Because, again, even though I understood cognitively that, like, Harry Potter has green eyes, it wasn't something I saw or that, like, was emotionally linked to me. So when Daniel Radcliffe rolls up with blue eyes, I'm like, whatever. He's got the scar. That's fine. So I do want to spend some time talking about what this means for me as a reader and as a writer. So first off, as a reader, if you have watched any of my previous videos, you will know that I have spoken a lot about how I get very confused in scenes, written scenes about with lots of action or lots of movement. For example, you know, I did a read with me for the entire Raven cycle by Maggie Stiefvater, and in the last book, The Raven King, there's this like big battle. I cannot to this day tell you a single thing that happens for like a good 30 pages, I guess, because none of it made sense to me. There were so many moving pieces and so much happening that I just completely lost thread and just had to pick it back up again when everything was over. I don't know how that book ends. And this has been something I've struggled with my entire life. Like, again, to bring it back to Harry Potter, which, because I feel like it's for every millennial of a certain age and maybe even younger or older, you know, Harry Potter is just so pivotal for our childhoods. Even in Harry Potter, I didn't really have a super firm grasp of the Battle of Hogwarts. It's definitely not as bad as other books. And I could get like individual scenes, but like overall the picture's very muddled for me. Again, I'm using the word picture as though I have a picture. I do not, to be clear. And I thought this deficiency, right, my inability to understand like battles or action scenes or anything sort of like high energy, high movement like that, I thought that was just, I'm a bad reader, I'm stupid, you know, I'm not paying enough attention, I don't care enough to pay attention. Like, I thought it was something in me that made me bad at it. And like reading has always been so important to me. Reading has always been so instrumental to how I interact with the world and how I interpret the world and how I experience the world. So I just thought like, oh, this is something I'm bad at. This is just I'm not good at this. And you know, I'm almost 25 years old. So it's like, if for a quarter of a century I've never been good at it, I'm probably not going to get better now. And you know, now I know that the reason that other people are so much better at me at reading these types of scenes and just getting it is because they can see it and I can't. And you know, it's not anybody's fault, right? Authors aren't writing with this in mind, and I certainly wasn't reading with it in mind. But now I know. You know, now I know. I don't know if reading more slowly or reading and rereading. I'm not a person who particularly likes to reread sections over and over again, unless I've finished and I've gone back. So I totally forgot where that sentence was going. I've cried a lot about this, which is so silly. It's such a silly thing to cry about, but it's also very hard. I mean, it's especially silly right now. I mean, this particular socio-cultural political climate that we're in, this thing that's going on, that people are really, really dying of, and, you know, becoming actually disabled about, you know, lives are being ruined and upended, and I'm over here crying because I can't fucking see shit when I close my eyes. Like, cool, bitch. But this is something that I have felt the need to share because, you know, if you're watching these videos, which, let's be totally clear, no one is, but if you're watching these videos, particularly my reviews of books, I want you to be able to trust my opinion, because I don't want to lie, but there might be things that I find confusing or unclear or, you know, just sort of weird that another reader might not. And I have to take that into account. And so now I'm like going back to any book I've ever said on this channel or otherwise, any book that I've ever said, like, oh, like the climax or the final thing was just so like, what the fuck, right? I had to think, well, was it actually poorly written? Like, was it actually poorly explained, or was I just not getting it? Because I can't. So I have to be more patient with myself as a reader, because I have to now understand that there are things I'm just not gonna get either right away or at all. And I have to be more patient with authors, because they are not writing with people like me in mind, and that's not their fault. Aphantasia was only named, it was first observed in 1880, but it was only named in 2015, right? Like, this thing is like still new to us. So many people like me don't know that they have it until they see someone like me talking about it. So, you know, I don't blame authors for using rich visual language that is totally lost on me. Like, I don't blame them for that, because that's what we're taught to do. I've actually thought a lot, sort of to transition into me as a writer. Been thinking a lot about how, when we are taught creative writing, like even from elementary school, we're always saying things like show not tell, which I still is correct, right? Absolutely show don't tell. But I remember always hearing the phrase, you know, paint a word picture. And I always hated that. That was always such a dumb, unhelpful piece of writing advice. And I couldn't figure out like why people were still using this phrase, paint a word picture. I'm like, that doesn't mean anything to me, right? That never meant anything to me. And I know now it's because I don't see the pictures that authors are painting, and I can't paint a picture of something I can't see. So in 2018, I participated in NaNoWriMo, which is National Novel Writing Month, and I completed it, and that is still a writing project I am working on. Haven't touched it in a million years, but I'm still processing it, I guess. And when I think about this book, when I think about the things I want to work on, it is all plot related and sort of like character related, but I don't think about the visuals of my world at all. It's low fantasy, so like it takes place in the real world, but there's magic and shit. I don't know what my main character looks like. I don't know what her friends look like. I don't know what her grandmother looks like. I don't know what her, you know, the people in her life look like. I don't know. And, you know, as I was writing this first draft for Nano, you know, I understood that what I was writing was very like plot and dialogue heavy. I love dialogue. I've always loved dialogue. I would tell myself, well, like, yeah, so you're not describing things visually. That can be done in the second draft. Just get to the 50,000 words, get all the ideas down on paper, and all that fluffy stuff can come later. But it's been a year and a half now, and I still don't ever think about this story visually. I think about it in terms of more like set pieces. Like, there's a school, because she goes to school, and then there's like where she lives, and then like some shit happens at the library. So like there are places, but I don't know what they look like. Like I said, I don't know what my main character looks like, and I also don't care. You know, reading books, my whole life, whenever an author has focused too long on a character's physical aspects, I always check out, because I don't care. I have never once in my life cared what a character looks like, and it has always annoyed me when like a character's physical representation is like central to a scene or to the telling of the story. And now I know it's because I can't visualize them, so to me it's irrelevant information, but it's not for other people. But I didn't know that. I was just like, oh my god, why are you spending this whole paragraph describing your protagonist? Like, who gives a shit? And like, oh, like other people do. I just don't, because it's not information that is useful to me. So unless it's like Harry Potter, again, you know, the fact that he has a scar matters, because that scar becomes like part of the plot, so that matters. But if Harry Potter didn't have a scar, and so he was just some skinny, black-haired, green-eyed boy, that, I don't care. I don't care if instead he had been, you know, chubby and blonde and with brown eyes. That doesn't matter to me. And it never has. It wouldn't have changed my relationship with Harry. It wouldn't have changed my interpretation of him as a person, because his physical representation never mattered. Other than the scar, which again was like a plot device. But to bring it back to my own writing, now I know this deficiency that I have as a writer, this limitation that I have, where I am never going to be able, or am likely never going to be able, to describe the world that my characters are inhabiting visually, because that's not how I experience it. So in this story, this book that I've been talking about, her grandmother runs a like magic supply shop, and when I think of being in that shop, I think of how crowded it is, I think of how it smells, I think of the sounds, I think of like how it feels to like bump into the things, because it's a very sort of crowded, eclectic shop. But if you ask me what it looked like, I'm like, I don't know, there are shelves and stuff. I can list for you the things that she would sell, but I don't know what they would look like. You know, it's very conceptual. Having aphantasia doesn't mean that I can't imagine things. It just means that the things I imagined are more like ideas and concepts and not like pictures of these things. And I definitely think there are ways in which this could be beneficial to me. You know, I still have time to figure those out. I still have time to figure out how to like, you know, weaponize this in my favor. But right now it's just, you know, it's still so new, and I'm still kind of in mourning for this interior world I could have had. I've always been a daydreamer. I've always been someone who just like totally checks out and like disappears into, you know, the plots in my head. And now I know that all of those places that I've gone that I haven't really gone because I don't know what they look like, that were I a different person or had my brain work differently, I could have also been like seeing things, and like who knows how much richer my worlds would have been, who knows how much better I would be at telling stories, you know, how many more stories I could have told. And I mean, there's no point in really dwelling on it because I can't change it, you know, I can't go back and redo all those daydreams with images, but it is still sad, and it is still something that I think about basically every day. So I don't know what this video is going to look like when you're seeing it. I feel like I've sort of talked myself in circles and all over the place. I guess the thesis is, please be patient with me as I try to learn how to be patient with myself. This is obviously not something that's going to affect my day-to-day. You know, I do not consider myself disabled in any way. Like, that's not what this is at all. But it does affect how I interpret the world. And I'm still figuring out how, particularly in the realm of fiction, which, as you can see from this channel, is something I love a lot. I love stories. And I'm still figuring out how not being able to see things as the authors intend me to is affecting how I read and how I interpret. So I am going to try and be patient with myself. I'm going to try and be patient with authors, and I'm going to try and keep this limitation that I have in mind going forward when I review a book. To be clear, I am not going to just dismiss whenever I find something in a book complicated or confusing or beyond my interpretation, because ultimately it is an author's job to get their point across. And it is still worth mentioning that for me, like if they have failed to do that for me, I think that's still worth mentioning. But I'm going to be bringing this up in the future. So if I'm reviewing a book and I'm like, this final battle was confusing as fuck, I don't want that to necessarily turn other people off, because for some people it might not be. It might be this glorious, you know, scene of triumph or whatever that I'm just not going to be able to participate in. So yeah, I'm going to ask for just your understanding as I try to figure this out. If, as you have been watching this, you are thinking like, oh no, I think this might be me, please let me know in the comments. I would love to talk to you about it. Or if you have known that this is you for like a long time, and you have any particular pearls of wisdom, God knows I could use them. I would love to have a discussion about it in the comments below. And like I said, check out the links and stuff I'm going to be putting in the description, because I always think it's more helpful to have information than not to have it. And some of the videos are just like cool and stuff and fun to watch, even if you're like, this is totally outside of my experience, I have no idea what this bitch is talking about. It's still cool to just watch these videos and hear what people have to say. This has been a rambling mess, but thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for just like sticking it out with me, for being patient with me, and one absolute silver lining in this whole saga of my life is that it's really distracted me from the much more serious and deadly thing going on in the world around me. So I hope you learned something about yourself in this time, that can maybe help enrich your understanding of yourself and of the world and of the way that you interact with and experience the world. Because even though, like I said, it's been hard to deal with, it's a lot better than having a disease. But thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you in the next one, and yeah, okay, bye.